The best way to learn how to light is by getting hands-on and experimenting with lighting setups. But what if you don't have access to lighting gear? Film equipment is expensive, so it can make learning the art of lighting difficult. In this video, I'll show you a great way to get theoretical lighting experience using pre-visualization software. If you've been on my channel before, you will have seen that I've done a video on pre-visualization using CineTracer. For this video, I'll be using set.a.light 3D, which I discovered after watching Blaine Westrop's video on the program. Set.a.light 3D is a brilliant app for doing previs and practicing lighting techniques. It's easy to use and includes industry standard lighting, fixtures, and modifiers, along with a pretty extensive library of pre-built 3D models that you can use to build out scenes. One of the things I like most about the app is how easy it is to make minor adjustments to settings, like wall length and height, when building out sets. There's also a 3D importer plugin you can purchase to import your assets and use them within your scene. For this video, I've put together 3 different types of scenes to show you what you're able to achieve in set.a.light 3D. For this first example, let's light a typical interview setup. In this setup, I wanted to shoot the interviewee on a colored backdrop. I decided to use a 600D with light dome as the key light, and I changed the focal length to 50 just to make it a little bit wider. I adjusted the intensity of the light as it was looking pretty spicy on the talent's face, and then I rotated the chair and talent. The key light was still pretty hot, so I brought it down a little bit more. I then wanted to bring up the exposure of the background. So I used a couple of 120Ds with light domes as the fixtures to light the background. So as you can see, I just duplicated the lighting fixture and then rotated it to bring up the exposure. I wanted to reduce the amount of spill that was going to hit the talent from the background, so I moved the talent and chair forward to give a bit more separation and then moved the camera back so that the frame size was the same. I then decided to adjust the intensity of the backdrop lights so that the backdrop was a more consistent level. In set.a.light 3D, there's a couple of different types of false color that you'd find in your external monitors, which makes exposing backgrounds and talent very easy. Now that we're happy with the level of the background, I decided to move in some solids to cut spill from the lights hitting the talent. With the 2 solids in place, I decided to reposition the key light so that it was a little bit more frontal, and then the exposure on the talent's face was still looking a little bit hot, so I brought down the intensity slightly. Then I just lowered the backdrop lights to remove that dark line in the very bottom of the seamless. It was looking a little bit contrasty, so I decided to add a little bit of fill. I picked a 120D and added a light dome mini to it, just to bring up the fill side of the face a little bit. And to round out the lighting for this setup, I decided to put a Titan tube above the talent, just to give a little bit of a hair light to the top of their head. I dropped the level of the hair light so that it wasn't so intense. And this is the final look. In this next example, let's put together a piece-to-camera lighting setup. For this piece-to-camera setup, you'll notice that there are windows to the left of camera, creating these slashes of light across the background as well as the front of the talent's body. With that in mind, I'll position the key light to the left of camera, using the window as the motivation for the key light. I wanted to go with a soft source because of the glasses that the talent were wearing. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in a 600D as the main source for the key light, which I'm then going to bounce into an 8x8 bounce. I'm just going to position the light so that it's at a good spot for the key. And then I'm going to tilt the bounce forward a little bit just so that it looks a bit more top-downy, and reposition that 600D. And then I'll bring in a piece of diffusion, and that will be an 8x8 diffusion as well to match the bounce. And I'm going to reposition that 600D so that it's in a better position for the bounce, like so. And then move the diffusion so that it's not in the way of the camera. And that's what that's doing currently. And it's looking pretty good, nice and soft. So the next thing I want to do is put in an edge light to make the talent pop out from the background a little bit. And the fixture I decided to use for this was a 300D without any modifiers, just the bare reflector. I'm going to raise that up a bit. And then I'm going to position it over the shoulder of the talent. And we'll see what that's doing here. It's brought up the side of his face a little bit, but it doesn't seem to be doing as much as I wanted it to. So I'm going to bring it closer to the talent and see what that does. And I'm going to position it again so that we're in a happy spot. I'm going to move that chair out of the way so that I can reposition the light in a better spot. And with that, let's see what that looks like. And we'll turn that off. Contrasty, and then on, we've got a little bit of edge. Things are looking pretty good there, but I think that the background slash is a little bit hot for my liking. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring down the sensitivity of the ISO by half, and then I'm gonna bring in another 600D to double the output into the bounce. And then I'm gonna replace the 300D with a 600D, which will bring up the overall intensity of all of our light fixtures to counteract what we've done in terms of halving the sensitivity of the sensor. I could have done a little bit more to set dress the areas behind the talent, but I'm happy with the overall look of the lighting of this shot. Finally, let's put together a lighting setup for a conversation scene at a dining room table. And as you can see, there's already a practical lamp above the table. So let's start by lighting from the outside by putting a 600D through this window. And it's looking pretty harsh, so I'm gonna add a softbox just to soften up the light a little bit. The reason why I chose the 600D was so that it was more closer to moonlight once I changed the color temperature of the camera to 4300 Kelvin, just to balance the inside light and outside light a little bit. I also dropped the intensity of the 600D as it was a little bit hot for my liking. Overhead practical looked a bit hot, so I brought the intensity of the practical down, just so that it wasn't so spicy. For the key light, I wanted to use a light that was motivated by the overhead practical lamp, and the fixture I decided to use for this was the RE Sky Panel 120. So I'm just gonna position that in the scene right now, and we'll put it on the far side and up above, and it's looking pretty bright at the moment, so I'm gonna drop the intensity down, and I'm gonna put barn doors on it just to stop any spill that I'm not liking. And I'm just gonna on and off the light just to see what that looks like. And I'm gonna change the intensity a little bit. I'm gonna position the light because I think it could be in a better position here, and increase the intensity a little bit, just for a little bit of a higher key look. And I think that the actor on the right-hand side of frame needs a little bit of an edge light just to bring the hair up from the dark colored cabinets. So for that, I'm gonna use a Titan tube. And the motivation for this light is the moonlight that's coming through the window. I'm gonna reposition the camera here so that we've got the actors more centered in frame. And then I'm gonna bring up the intensity of that key light, just for a brighter look. In the background, I'm gonna add some practical lights, which are these Titan tubes that are gonna sit underneath this drying rack or range hood situation. And I'm gonna set the color temperature to 3200 Kelvin. I'm gonna place 2 of them just to span the entirety of the length of that metal drying rack. And I think I'm gonna drop the intensity to minimum, so 2%, so that it doesn't stick out too much. We don't want it to be blowing out in the background. The next thing I wanna do is I wanna add an edge light to this actress because we're losing her hair in the dark fridge in the background. So let's try by putting in a practical lamp. This lamp's not really doing much. So I'm gonna put a smaller lamp on the table behind the actress. And that doesn't seem to be doing much either at this point. So I think we're gonna put in another tube light, and I'm gonna put it at 2700 Kelvin just to make it a little bit warmer than everything else. Then I'm just gonna position it so that it's out of frame and angled properly so that it's hitting the back of the actress's head. Just to add a bit of an edge light to the actress's hair so that we're not losing all of the detail into the fridge there. Let's reposition the actor's head so that they're looking at each other, and this is looking pretty solid, but I think I'm gonna make the frame a little bit tighter to lose that little shaft of light on the right hand side of frame and center the actors up a little bit there. And then I'm gonna reposition that practical light so that it's in the center. The floor of the kitchen looks a little bit too bright for my liking. I'm just gonna bring down the intensity a little bit more of that light outside, the 600D. So let's drop that down a little bit so that it's not so bright on the floor there. And this is the final look. Although I own a small amount of lighting equipment, that only really allows me to light small setups. So I really enjoy the ability to hop into a virtual environment and practice lighting techniques using fixtures that I typically don't have access to. Being able to do this in the comfort of your own home also allows you to play with looks whenever you have a spark of inspiration. This is a huge plus, especially when you're first starting out, where you may not have easy access to lighting equipment. There is an upfront cost to purchasing pre-visualization software, but I think the return on investment is worth it. This software is something that won't go out of date quickly, and you can use it throughout the duration of your career. Plus, it's cheaper than renting a full lighting package just to practice a couple of setups. If you want to learn more, I've included some links to additional resources for both set.a.light 3D and CineTracer below if you're interested. If you want to see more content like this in the future, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on future videos. Thanks for watching, and until next time, don't forget to hit record.